Brian Neiman, Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority. 105.9 FM. AM 630. WMAL.
Happy Wednesday and happy Thanksgiving to you. If you won't be around tomorrow to listen to the great show. Actually, Austin Hill's in tomorrow. I'll be back on Friday.
Yeah, I won't.
I know you won't. You'll be having your cornbread dressing.
I'll be eating lots of cornbread dressing. Get out of my way.
I think we've established that. Gary Pickett for the Washington Times is in for Mary Catherine this morning. Bill Kristol's on the line, editor of the Weekly Standard. And you were at the debate last night. I have to ask you, because it's no secret that you haven't been really all that enamored with the candidates so far in the Republican presidential race. Having been in the room last night, hearing the debates, especially on national security last night, you feeling any better today?
I am. I'm heartbroken that Mary Catherine's not here first, but but it's okay. Hope you guys are able to still do the show despite.
Somehow we'll suffer through, Bill.
And it's good that you guys can do that. It was actually, I thought they were pretty good. From my point of view, as a believer in a sort of strong Reaganite foreign policy, the good news for me was they were, with the exception of Ron Paul and John Huntsman, who together have 10-15% of the vote. It looks like 85% of the candidates who are going to get 85% of the Republican primary vote are strong on foreign policy. They want to be serious about America's role in the world. They don't want to slash defense irresponsibly. They want to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons, and I thought they were pretty good at answering most of the questions.
Well, I'm looking at the latest polls, a whole series of them, that talk about the ascendancy of Newt Gingrich.
Right.
There's a Q poll out, came out yesterday, Gingrich 26, Romney 22. Of course, Romney's going to do okay in New Hampshire, but if you look at South Carolina, it's Gingrich 31. Kane 17, Romney 16. Pennsylvania, Gingrich 32. Arizona, Gingrich 28. I mean, it does appear that this surge toward Newt is real. Do you think it will be sustained?
It's certainly real. On the other hand, there have been real surges in the last few months that have faded very quickly, and every poll shows that about two-thirds of Republican primary voters are open to changing their mind. That's the big discount we should apply to all these polls. The real Republican primary race is sort of 10% Gingrich, 9% Romney, 5% Kane, et cetera, with about 65% undecided or just loosely leaning. Having said that, Newt has had a terrific 2 or 3 months, and there's clearly been, if you just look at the last several months of polling, an appetite for an alternative to Romney. And as supporters have fallen off, Bachmann and Kane and Perry, they've sort of amazingly refused to go to Romney. Now that could change. They could see him more and decide, he's fine. He could beat Obama. We'll go to him. But for now, I think Newt is. He's certainly the alternative to Romney right now, and I think he's the most plausible alternative to Romney. I think at the end of the day, Kane and Perry, and you saw this last night, are just too weak, especially on foreign policy. I don't think voters ultimately think Michelle Bachmann, she's an impressive woman in many ways, but is probably quite up to being in the Oval Office now. And so if you're looking for a sort of more populist, somewhat more conservative perhaps, a bolder thinking alternative to Romney, I think you end up with Gingrich, and I think Mitt versus Newt will be a very interesting race if that's the way it shakes out.
But hold on a second, Bill. Even though a lot of people talk about, say, Newt's past baggage, what about, say, Newt's current baggage? Let's remember, he did burn a lot of bridges with a number of Republicans back in the 90s, a number of bridges that have not been mended. We talk about, say, Dick Armey, et cetera, et cetera. And, fundraising. Certainly he's fundraising much better now since he's at the top of the pack. But given that we're sort of not too sure if he's going to be able to sort of sustain this polling, how far is he going to be able to go with sort of weird support that may not necessarily come from some of those bridges that he sort of burned back then?
Look, it's a huge question. I mean, he's a very interesting candidate. He's both a dazzling candidate at times and a flawed candidate. Professorial and sort of, enamored of some of his ideas, which maybe he doesn't need to throw them all out as much as he does. He's antagonized a lot of people over the past. He's also got a lot of loyalty from the past. I mean, I feel this personally. I worked very closely with Newt, especially in 93, 94, working on the Republican takeover of Congress. Newt's a guy who both, as I say, dazzles you and then infuriates you within, minutes of each other. And I think a lot of people are going to be asking themselves, the main thing people will be asking themselves is, what will he be like as president? And I think he's run a pretty disciplined campaign. And I would say, if you watched him for the last few months, I personally would feel this, that I feel more reassured about him in the Oval Office than I would have thought I would be 3 or 4 months ago. Now, that doesn't mean that I would necessarily vote for Newt over Mitt, but I think he's plausible now. And I think actually most voters know about the so-called baggage, and if they think he'll be a good president, they'll discount whatever mistakes, personal and otherwise, he's made in the past to a pretty considerable degree. Republican primary voters are alarmed about the state of the country. They want someone who will embrace bold solutions and also will know how to implement them, how to execute them. And in Gingrich, you have someone who's both a big thinker and an experienced guy, which isn't a bad combination.
And yet, though, he had a position last night on immigration, which is not going to play well in some quarters. He basically says that, we think we should find a way to bring these people into the fold if they've been in this country, even though illegally, some 20, 25 years.
That was striking. I agree, Brian. I mean, he really went out of his way to emphasize that. I give him credit for doing that. I think he said himself, some people don't like this, and it's generally been viewed as kind of a poison pill or whatever in Republican
amnesty
primaries.
In some quarters.
On the other hand, I personally rather agree with him on this, but I'm myself, I'm not probably perhaps where the majority of Republican primary voters are on immigration. We haven't really tested this. Everyone says, the Republican base will hate this, but I think the polling on immigration is a little more ambiguous. I think Newt invited a debate on that, and this is an example. Let's see. He's not playing it safe. Yeah, he rose in the polls, as you said earlier. He could have sort of mailed it in last night and decided to go cautious. I give him credit for willing to sort of debate an issue like immigration, which is so volatile and controversial. And, let's just see how this plays out over the next few weeks.
All right, last question. Did the Republicans make a huge mistake back in August when they decided to make a decision on the debt ceiling, $1.2 trillion worth of cuts, and putting $600 billion worth of cuts for the military on the table? Because now you have to deal with the consequences of those cuts actually moving forward.
Yeah, I was not in favor of that at the time, and I think they can reverse them, but I think it was playing with fire, and I just think accepting even the principle that you can afford to cut military spending 20% next year, would likely $45 billion, so I guess 10% next year, is real in this world we live in, is a pretty crazy principle to accept. They need to reverse it, and they need to not be scared, even though we have a big budget deficit and people want to cut government, to say, wait a second, there are some responsibilities and priorities.
But can it be reversed next year, or does it have to wait until after the election in 2012?
Well, either way, but I think Republican, in my view, the presidential candidates in particular, and a lot of them said this last night, cannot accept that it is the responsible leadership for the U.S. to cut the defense budget by $45 billion next year.
All right, Bill. Good to have you on as always. We appreciate it.
Great talking to you. Happy